Are you sick of suffering? Well, this all comes down to the 3 steps in the cycle of suffering. And if you can identify what these 3 steps are and fix them, you can literally end all suffering. Now, the first step is dissatisfaction with reality, or dissatisfaction with what is. Now, you might have realized and recognized that the mind is never happy with what is. It is always striving for more, looking for better, looking for bigger things. And even if you try and fulfill a desire or a goal, that sense of happiness and satisfaction rarely lasts longer than a few moments or a few minutes. I experienced this for myself, but I just tried harder. I thought I can outwork this lack of happiness. I can outstrive this lack of fulfillment and satisfaction. So many years ago, when I was during this phase, I would try my absolute hardest in all areas of my life. I made millions of dollars in business, and personally, I strove to have best relationships that I could. I strove to be the best sportsman I could. When I was racing bikes, I went from amateur to professional or semi-professional, as it were, competing on the world stage. But none of this made any difference. None of it had a lasting happiness. This is all due to the mind's inherent belief in a sense of lack. The mind feels, and the mind is not you, but the mind feels it lacks something. It looks out at the world and says, I want to shape the world. It's not as I want it. Right? The mind says it's not supposed to be like this. It should be colder. It should be warmer. I should be getting more results. I should be, getting better relationships. I should be having bigger things and more stuff. So the mind plays this endless game of saying, this is not good enough, constantly. Now, you can test this and qualify for this for yourself. You don't need to go and make millions of dollars or reach the pinnacle of sport or whatever it is. Although if you've done any of those things or got to the top of your industry or whatever, you will also know that at the top of those so-called mountains, there's literally nothing there. And certainly nothing that you really have yearned for, which is that lasting peace and happiness and satisfaction. So it's very easy to test and qualify this just with the simplest of desires. Let's just say you have a simple desire for chocolate. Nothing wrong with that. There's no judgment. Let's just use it as an example. So the moment that you accept this desire, the mind begins going into overdrive. I must get chocolate. I really want chocolate. I've got to get it right now. Let me raid the cupboards. Is there anything that can give me this chocolate hit? So you're in this state of desire, and the mind is reinforcing and emphasizing this sense of lack. This is something you don't have. You must fix this, says the mind. The moment that you have the chocolate, you get this release, a pleasant kind of sensation. It's been satisfied. Now, the mistake is thinking that the getting of the object or the getting of the experience has resulted in this sensation of pleasure or temporary happiness. But that's not the case. What's actually happened is because the desire has stopped, there's a release. There's a relaxation, because at that point, and only that point, because it's very short-lived and temporary, there is no desire. The mind has shut up, basically. It's stopped denying what is, and it's stopped trying to improve what is, here in the step 1 of the cycle of suffering, which is dissatisfaction with what is. Now, at this point that you fulfill that desire, there's no desire. So there's no sense of lack. But we make the mistake of thinking that it's the object that gave us that sense of happiness and satisfaction. But it's not. It's actually the cessation or the stopping of the desire that created that. Now, the way and the reason you can know this is because you've had chocolate before and it didn't last, did it? This sensation, that sense of happiness or satisfaction, whether it's chocolate or a cigarette or wine or watching TV or relationships or experiences or whatever it is, the mind says, yeah, that's okay, but it's not enough. We've got to do this again. And the moment that that desire ends, the mind kicks into gear. Oh, I need to create another desire. I lack something. So that's step one in the cycle of suffering. It's this dissatisfaction with what is. The mind observes everything that's going on internally, externally, adds dialogue, adds its own judgment. You don't ask for any of this, right? The mind is just going off and doing its thing, saying, oh, you need this, you've got to do this, make sure you get this, you lack this, you're not good enough, you're not worth it. If you get more, if you get bigger, if you get faster, then you're going to be worth it, then it'll be worth it. It never works. And you can test it and qualify it for yourself with the simplest of desires and the simplest of goals that you achieve. It's never good enough for the mind. So this constant dissatisfaction with what is the seed of suffering. It's the very essence of what suffering is. Literally, the mind saying, I am not happy with the way things are. Now, imagine for a moment that that could be removed, that that dissatisfaction with what is could be permanently ended, so that no matter what was occurring, at any given time, there was always an acceptance and a loving satisfaction and happiness with everything that is. Wouldn't that be amazing? Well, it's accessible to you right now. So the first step is realizing and understanding that the mind, not you, but the mind always operates from a place of lack and a place of separation. You can see this again for yourself, even if you're moving through the world and you don't have a sense of lack. The mind's not created something, it's not driving you and saying you've got to get this, and if you get this, then you'll be happy. Maybe you're just walking along the street and everything's fine, but then maybe you see a very happy couple, or you see somebody in a super, $200,000, $300,000 or pound car or something like that, and the mind says, oh, they are doing better than you. You need that. You lack that. So the mind does this separation game where it starts comparing and contrasting. Again, it's saying what is right now is not good enough. There is a dissatisfaction with reality. Now, if you think about this from a deeper level, it's kind of insane. Because reality is reality. It's not something that can be shaped to the will of an individual person. We can't even control our heart rate. We can't stop a sneeze. We can't control when we blink. We can't control when our bowels move or when we get hungry. We're not in control of any of this. So to think that, for the mind to think that, oh, actually, I'm dissatisfied with this amazing all that there is, with, the planets and the stars and the birds and the fish and the oceans and all the life. I don't like this. It's not perfect. I must change it. That's an insane point of view, isn't it? That somehow all of this is wrong, and that somehow the mind or the body mind, whatever we want to call it, could somehow influence any of this when we can't even control the simplest things. Can't control the weather. We don't control how the rings on Saturn are. We don't control the stars in the sky, our sneezes, our pulse, our breath, when we were born, the way that we look, like none of this. But the mind somehow thinks, well, actually, there's certain bits that you can control, and those are the bits that I want you to go after, because that's what you're lacking. You're lacking, those bits are not right. The other bits I don't have a problem with, right? So the mind, again, plays its separation game and says, oh, all that's good, because it realizes it can't change it. This stuff, that's where I'm going to create suffering, because you need to go out and change that stuff, because it's not right. The mind says, nope, reality is wrong. It's bonkers. Okay, so that's step number one, dissatisfaction with what is. And incidentally, it doesn't matter the nature of what is, it doesn't matter how the is stuff is, the mind will always find fault with it. Oh, there's not enough chocolate. Oh, I ate it too quickly and now I feel guilty. Oh, I need to get more. Never ending dissatisfaction with what is. Not because the reality is not the way that it should be, or that there's anything wrong with the nature of reality, just that that is what the mind does. It is dissatisfied with what is, regardless of how it is. And you can test this yourself and verify by achieving your goals. They're never enough for the mind. It goes again. I'm not happy with this. I'm not happy with 1 million. I want 10. I'm not happy with a promotion. I want 2. I'm not happy with this partner. I need another partner. I'm not happy with this new car. It's not new anymore. I need the one that the neighbors have got. And so on, says the mind. Step 2 then follows on from this dissatisfaction with what is to a so-called cause and effect. And again, driven by the mind. Mind says, step 1, I'm dissatisfied with what is. You, the person, need to go off and fix all this. So step 2 is the reaching, the stretching out, and the trying to manipulate what is to the way that the mind wants it. And this play here, this step here, is the entire structure on which the Western world and the modern world is created. You're not happy with what is, so you're going to have to work your ass off to make sure that it gets the way that you want it. And lo and behold, here enters a life of slavery, working for pennies, to try and get bigger things, to then go to work to pay off the bigger things and the faster things and the showy things and blah, and so it goes. And it's not just the physical and material world, it's also the spiritual world. The mind says, I'm dissatisfied with what is. I'm not enlightened. I'm not awakened yet. I've seen other people's awakening story. I've not gone through that. I've not sensed oneness. I've not had this feeling where I'm everything or where I'm nothing. I still have a self, the mind says. Therefore, I must go out and attend more retreats and watch tons more YouTube videos and go and meet people and buy courses. Step 2, the action, trying to shape life. But you're not observing life. You're not on the sidelines trying to shape what life is or trying to get involved with life. You are life. It's extremely arrogant of humankind to think that there is the universe out there and them. Oh, here we are, observing the universe. Look at us, how intelligent. You are the freaking universe. You're not separate to this. But the mind plays its game. I'm dissatisfied with what is. And because I'm dissatisfied with what is, I must take action. But guess what? That very action is moving you away from the peace and happiness that you seek. Because the peace and happiness is not something you get. The peace and happiness is something you are. But it's obscured by, number 1, the dissatisfaction with what is, which the mind presents constantly. And it's obscured by, number 2, the constant driving away from yourself to external things. I must get more of this. I must get a promotion. I must get more money, a bigger house, a faster car, a better partner. I must attend more retreats. I must get awakened. I must read more books. All of this, again, is reinforcing the sense of lack. The sense that you don't have all that, you don't have everything that you need already, and therefore you must go out into the world. And it's so flawed on so many levels. 1, it's flawed because you cannot shape the world. You are the world. You can't have any influence on this because you are it. Number 2, that you don't already have everything within you that is this peace and happiness. Like the very step, you cannot take a step closer to yourself. So seeking this fulfillment, this satisfaction, this happiness in external objects, experiences, relationships, sensations, or breakthroughs is taking you away from your true nature. It's denying what you already are. And it's reinforcing this sense that there's a you here that needs to go out over there and get something it doesn't yet have. And it's driven by the mind, which is a separation machine. Looks at everything in the world and says, this is separate. That's a rock, that's a bird, that's a man, that's a woman, that's spiritual, that's not spiritual, and so on. But it's not reality. That is not reality. How could all of this, all that there is, how could it be wrong? It just is. It's always been and will always be. There is nothing wrong about it. To the mind, there are certain things that appear black or white, or that's good, that's bad, that's wrong. But that itself is also contained in all that there is. And all that there is not wrong and does not need to be changed. And you are already that. So you can't influence it. So step one in the cycle of suffering is this dissatisfaction with what is. I'm not happy, says the mind, with the way that things are right now. That creates suffering. Step number two, the mind then forces action, trying to shape the will, trying to shape the life and the world to the will of the mind. Now, if we take a metaphor and say a river is like life, what the mind is saying is swim up river, try and change the flow of the river. Go up river, swim against life to get what you want. Bend it to your will, go and shape it. Now, the spiritual direction is kind of standing in the river, but maybe trying to resist the flow initially when you think, oh, actually, I'm doing nothing. I'm standing here in the river, but you're still resisting. The full awakening is realizing you are the river. And it's not a case of just going with the flow or relaxing. You cannot not do this because you are it. So we have step number one, dissatisfaction with what is. Step number two is the forcing of action by the mind, of you going out into the world and trying to shape it and bend it to your will. And that very action is creating action and not peace. It's moving away from peace, and it's moving away from acceptance of what is, and it's moving away from happiness. Okay, it's like banging a drum and saying, why can't I hear the tune of peace? Boom, 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 boom. Why am I not hearing the peace tune? Boom, boom. Just stop. You don't need any of this. And then step number three in the cycle of suffering, the root of it all is the belief in a separate self. Because if there were no belief in a separate self, there would be no dissatisfaction with what is, because you would realize you are everything, and therefore it doesn't need changing because you are already it. And that removal of the separate self would lead to no requirement or no sense of lack. If you are everything, you lack nothing. So this belief in a separate self is both the root cause of suffering, but also is reinforced by the cycle in the other steps. The dissatisfaction with what is, dissatisfaction to whom? Oh, me, the separate self here. Well, what are you going to do about it? Well, the separate self here is going to go out into the world and is going to try and shape it to its will and make more money and get faster cars and go on better holidays and buy bigger houses so that it can get peace and happiness. And you know the way to fix all this instantly? It's to realize that there is no separate self. You're not separate to the universe. You can't go this weekend and take this weekend out of the universe. Just go and spend this weekend outside of the universe. You can't do it. Why? Because you are the universe. You're an aspect of the universe, just like the wave is the ocean. The wave thinks it's a wave. Oh, look at me, I'm a wave, I'm an individual wave. And there's, 8 billion other waves over there. It's just ocean. Just like the seaweed in the ocean or the shark in the ocean. It's just ocean. There's no need to do anything or go anywhere. Just unbecome what you never were. Unbecome the wave that you never were. And finally realize and see what you've always been, which is this, that all that there is, not the body, not the mind, not the body-mind, not a human being, not a separate anything, all that there is, and you are that. And when that is realized, this complete structure of the cycle of suffering is gone forever. No sense of a separate self, no dissatisfaction with what is, and no driving and forcing and trying to shape the world, because you realize you are that. I hope this has helped you.